And what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Designated Players and MLS Podcast. We are back with our penultimate not so deep dive. We are back into the Midwest. We are back with, I think we can remove enemy of the pod off of this team. It is Minnesota United with our friend Connor from Loonacy Pod. How you doing, buddy?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on, Andrew. It's always great to be here.
Yeah, man, super hyped to get you back. I mean, I know we had so much fun last time, so had to run it back again. Minnesota, they've been good to us recently, so I think we've had a couple of other teams take over the enemy title, which is good.
Right.
Because I think it was Real Salt Lake who said that I sounded uninformed when I was doing an interview on battered MLS fans. So they've catapulted you. Um, but
Well, you should be happy then we ousted them from the playoffs last year.
Yeah, no, I
So
was very happy. I saw that. I was like, yeah, good one. Yeah. How do you feel about that? Yeah. So no, it's awesome to have you back. It's awesome to get rolling again. Lots to talk about with Minnesota United, but we can't do any of that without Scarf of the Week. I know you mentioned you might not have one because you just moved house, which is awesome. Congratulations. But what would you show off?
so the one that is sticking out in my mind right now is one that I've had for a few years now, but it's a pride scarf. So
Nice.
it's a gray it's a scarf with a gray background, pretty much all the way across, and then from left to right you can see in the rainbow colors the skyline of Minneapolis and the skyline of St. Paul going from west to east there. So
Beautiful.
that's one of my favorites right there. You got Minneapolis MPLS on one side, STP on the other, and I wish I mean, like I said before the pod, I was stowing it away in boxes because we
Yeah,
just moved, but um, yeah, man, that's the one that's sticking out to me today, and it's a great scarf.
love it.
And it's lightweight. It's a good summer scarf.
Yeah.
It's one of those what is it, nylon
Yeah, it's like a
or
silky type of yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Like I said, you described it perfectly. It sounds wonderful. I love when they get unique. It's not just the logo and stuff. It's super nice there. Um, Me myself, as I mentioned, I've got three teams left to get in my collection of 30, and Minnesota is one of them. So I have brought out, and this is the first time I've ever shown this because it's not actually a soccer scarf. This scarf, as you can see, has no detail on it. It is just a
Oh yeah.
pure knit scarf, but it has a logo on it, which is the Buffalo Bison. So the Buffalo Bison
Whoa.
are a AAA affiliate of the Blue Jays, I believe, in the AAA system. And I brought it out because Buffalo, cold and snowy, Minnesota, cold and snowy at this time, because
Totally.
I had to make a stretch. I'm sorry, I wasn't. I was, and I've never won this one before. I bought it as a collectible, and I've never actually shown it off. So, yeah, we're gonna pretend that Buffalo and Minnesota are basically the same, and we're gonna move on with it, and nobody's gonna ask questions, and it's gonna be great. So, listen, we got a lot to chat about with Minnesota 25, but we should talk about Minnesota 24 because they made me look silly because they went into the season without a coach, and they still
Yeah.
finished up a very decent year, if you ask me, right? So they were finishing up the coaching search, and what should have been a year of transition and difficulty actually turned into a season of success. A sixth place finish in the West with a double penalty kick shootout win in round one before meeting their doom against LA like many before them and after them. Red Bulls as well. They were
Yeah.
bounced very early from the League's Cup, but Eric Ramsey and company will be looking to make another step forward as they take part in three different competitions this year. Major League Soccer, of course, the League's Cup, and the U.S. Open Cup in 2025. Your thoughts on the 2024 season as it was?
Well, yeah, you said it. I mean, it was definitely they exceeded my our expectations. I remember doing the season preview last year,
Yeah.
and we thought that it was going to be we were going to be below the playoff line for sure. No coach going in. Our MNUFC two coach was going to be the interim coach for the time being, so we weren't having super high hopes. But he came in and he did well for his time as interim coach. Actually, I don't think. He got a couple wins, including and also a draw against the then reigning champions Columbus Crew. And then we signed Eric Ramsey, a young coach, a young guy, younger than me even. I think that's the first time a coach has been hired that's actually younger than me. And but we weren't quite sure what to make of him, but we saw his resume. He's been with Chelsea, Manchester United, the Welsh national team, um, specialty with what do you call it? I'm totally brain farting on the words right now, but
That's good.
set
Yeah,
pieces. That's
yeah,
what I'm thinking. But yeah, again, we thought that we would finish below the playoff line because there were so many uncertainties going into the season, and then for the first maybe third of the season, we just got off to a flying start. Just surprising us all up here in Minnesota, and then we took a bit of a nosedive in the summer and ended up finishing pretty decently. I think with only one loss in the last 10 games in the regular season. So to make the playoffs was definitely exceeding our expectations, and we added some players. Uh, we got kind of that poacher goal scorer we've been looking at, and I really like what Eric Ramsey has done with his team. So all in all, I mean, it was a great season, and with a playoff win to end it off, and only losing to the eventual MLS Cup champs. So it was it was definitely it ended up better than I thought it would be, and I'm hoping for even better this year.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely love it, and I believe that there is a legitimate reason for excitement. I would agree with that, and um, you know, I wouldn't say that it comes from the transfer market though, because I think you did a lot of your work in the winter, and that's the case for a lot of teams who have been relatively quiet in the summer. But to this point, your best addition, who do you think it is?
It's got to be Kelvin Yeboah,
Mhm.
in my opinion. I think he's been that when he came in the summer transfer window, he started scoring goals right away. He was a great goal scorer. We also added Joaquin Pereira. I think he didn't have much of a chance to show himself off over the last third of the season or so, but I thought his passing was great. Statistically, you wouldn't see a lot from him, but you'd have to see him play to show his brilliance. I think he's a great passer, and he's got great vision on the field.
Yeah, and like I said, I think one of the things that gives you excitement in this group is that you brought players in last winter or summer rather, excuse me, and now you're giving them the opportunity to get a full preseason. You're giving them the opportunity to mesh with their new teammates under the new coach. And that's, with the potential that you guys showed towards the end of the year, I think it's exciting. For me, I'm excited for Nicholas Romero. It's a crowded center back room, no doubt, but he looks to be like a half decent signing, right? And maybe not necessarily right now, but for the future, right? Somebody you can step up and say, okay, learn under
Yeah,
Michael Boxall, learn under these center backs we've got, and when they move on, because Michael Boxall, he's not getting any younger, guys. Like
right.
let's be straight about it, right? So he's gonna move on eventually. Who's next up? This can be a really good like transition year. Use him in sub roles, get him used to playing in the system, and then boom, here you go. Now he's your next guy for the next 5, 6 years, right?
Right, and you mentioned Nicholas Romero. He's a young, like I said, he's another young guy. All we've been doing adding is with adding people over the winter is adding some youth, and
Yeah.
I love that with when it comes to Aaron Ramsey. You got Nicholas Romero, who again he's my favorite signing of this offseason. Then you've got Owen Jean. He's a center defensive midfielder from the French leagues in Amiens. Also only 21 years old, signed another 3-year contract just like Nico Romero did. And then the South Korean we signed this year was Hoyun Jung, 24 years old, slightly older, but still very young. Center midfielder, probably going to be a rotation piece along with most of our midfielders. But yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think that Nico Romero has been the best signing of this offseason so far, and with the way that our team is shaping up, I think it's going to end up being like a three center back line. It's going to be Michael Boxall, Nico Romero, and Jefferson Diaz in the back line, and with a left back and a right back on each side. So I think it's gonna be great. I think our we're gonna bulk up our defense this year, which we direly needed help with last year. So I'm hoping that it'll be end up being an improvement.
Again, it feels like you're building something really nice there through the transfer window. So it's something to keep an eye on as they move forward. But that also means that people have had to move on. So who do you think is the biggest loss up to this point so far?
I mean, most people I think would say, well, to those who aren't a Minnesota fan, I think they would say Timo Pukki.
Mhm.
They would, because Timo Pukki, he's a experienced striker. He's got a great track record, great goal scoring record, the top Finnish scorer of all time ever, in the world. And he went back to Finland to play for Helsinki this off season. But honestly, he wasn't really finding his form under Eric Ramsey's team. So my biggest loss is Mickey Tapias. I think I don't know what happened during the season for Mickey Tapias to fall out of favor with Eric Ramsey, but he went to Guadalajara this past winter. Um, he I mean, I can't explain it really. It's just he just moved on. Eric Ramsey didn't like using him. He ended up moving on to Jefferson Diaz, who I'm not exactly a big fan of, but you could chalk it up to Diaz having limited time to get reused to Eric Ramsey's game plan. But Mickey Tapias, I think he's the biggest loss. I think because I thought he was a fantastic center back.
Yep, and you've hit a couple of points here that I'm going to not try and spoil, but I agree with you. I think Tapias is going to be one of the ones that you feel the most. I think there are a few names that you could, and you hit on a bunch of them. So that's kind of my thought was like you lost a couple, but I honestly don't think that you lost a ton that you're going to lose sleep over, right? In terms of contributions and in terms of those who that you have lost that gave you contribution, you replaced him pretty well, right? I would argue. So, but I do think Tapias, who had a lot of ability and I thought was a very good partner next to Boxall when he was there. Yeah, now he's moved on, and now the problem is after Boxall, there's not a lot of proven talent. There's a lot of potential, but there's not a lot of proven talent there. And to kind of just continue branching off of that, right? When you don't have a lot of proven talent, somebody needs to break out and step up and be a player that is going to do something you didn't expect. So who is that player that non-Minnesota or Minnesota fans should be watching this year that may break out?
I'm a big Joseph Rosales fan.
Yeah.
I think he was fantastic last year. I want to say that he broke out pretty well. He only got the one goal in the playoffs, but he mostly plays on a left back position or a left winger, anywhere down the left side. But he's a box to box midfielder, has all the energy in the world, and he's still young. He's only 24 years old. So I think that Joseph Rosales is gonna really break out this year because you saw him get better and better as the season went on under Eric Ramsey, and if that track continues, he's going to be end up being one of the best defenders in the league. I think he's going to be great.
I like it. I think I picked him last year, if I remember correctly. I think that was my pick last year. So, um, I think he did well. So I look at him like, okay, I'm not super upset about that. I'm good with that one. For me, and you kind of hinted at it, because I think a lot of people are like, oh, Tani Oluwase is going to be massive this year, right? And I think that's an easy one to jump into here. But for me, and you hinted at it before, I'm talking about Jefferson Diaz, right? Because it seems like he's the next guy up, and we talked about how that center back room has a little bit to prove without Tapias being there. He's going to be the guy that steps up. Theoretically, he's going to step up and be the guy next to Boxall. He's got to prove himself if he doesn't want to lose that spot to Romero or to anybody else who may come in and want to take it from him. So it'll be very interesting to see if he can take it to that next level and break out, if you will.
Yeah, totally. And Jefferson Diaz, I thought had a very subpar season last year, but he only came in the summer transfer window. Not a lot of time to get used to the team. So I wasn't super impressed with him. I thought he gave the ball away too easily, and I thought that he managed to get himself out of position too easily. But maybe he'll change that during the off season with training with the new team with the new teammates. So I hope you're right. I hope that Jefferson Diaz is a good breakout player this year.
Yeah, I hope I'm right too. I always like being right. The problem is I'm not right often. So hopefully this is the one that I am right on. So listen, we're here. We're going into 2025, and we've got some players in, we've got some players out. You've got the coach that had a pretty decent 24. But what's the one question you've got in 2025 going into the season?
The question going into the season right now is what's going to happen with Hassani Dotson.
Yeah,
Um,
nice.
he has requested a trade away from Minnesota, And I think it's because they're with of all these new youth that's coming in, all the midfielders and the center backs that are coming in. Because Dotson's become uh, since he came to Minnesota, he's kind of been our utility player. He's filled in
Hmm.
where he's needed us to, and I'm a huge fan of Hassani Dotson. I think he's been great ever since he came here. In fact, we have a saying up here in Minnesota when it comes to Hassani Dotson goals, and that is bangers only. He doesn't score much, but when he does, they're beauties. Um, so he, I, but he has requested a trade away from Minnesota. As far as I know, he's still in contract negotiations or trade negotiations. I personally hope we keep him. It would really suck to lose him, but I wish him all the best if he does go. Yeah, that's my biggest question mark right now is what's going to happen with Hassani Dotson. Um, just a follow up question there too is what's going to happen with our formation? I personally see it as a 5-3-2 with the
Yeah.
players that we're bringing in, but I don't know how training is going right now. I think that I with all the new additions and with blending in with the team, I don't know if Eric Ramsey's gonna stick with the 4-2-3-1 like Minnesota has done for years, or move to a 4-3-3. There was a little bit of variation with that last year, but maybe there's going to be a consistent formation this year. So that's another big question for me.
Yeah, and a very good one, right? When you mention somebody like a Sonny Dotson who is so flexible
Right.
and can cover a lot of space for you and cover a lot of injuries and shortcomings in the transfer window, to lose somebody like that is not losing just a center mid, but it's losing coverage in a lot of spaces that you can't just replace with one signing. So definitely a big question there. And mine, it is something that kind of stems off what we were talking about last year, right? So I think last year we were like, all right, well, Bongi Tlonwane comes in, Leagues Cup blows up, right? What Bongi are we seeing this year? I think you can pretty much just copy and paste that onto Tani Oluwase, right? Comes out of nowhere, blows up in the league, really good goal contributions in year one. Bongi Hlongwane went from 8 goals in his first year, and then he stepped up to having 11 in year two. Will Oluwase continue that trend similar to Bongi Hlongwane? Because that's not something that's just completely normal to be like, oh, break out on the scene in your first year and then continue it in year two. So very, very interested to see how he gets on in 2025 because I don't think anybody, including myself, I think I had him as the third striker when we were doing our players to watch because I picked Jordan Adebayo Smith. And I remember the comments were like, nah, Tani Oluwase is number two. Like, watch out for him. I was like,
Mhm.
who's Tani Oluwase? Who's that? Like, who
Yeah.
are we talking about here? And then he comes in and boom, here's 8 goals and a starting spot in the Canadian national team. Have a good day,
Right.
So definitely interested to see how he does there.
Yeah, totally. And I was a big Tawny fan when he came in. I wasn't crazy about. I remember not being crazy about when Minnesota drafted him, and but then we sent him to San Antonio, where he just kind of tore up the league there, and I think he had like 17 goals and like 5 assists that year, and then he comes back and hits the ground running. So I think that's a very good question. Will Tani Oluwase not only continue his great form, but is he going to gain interest from other clubs, maybe abroad, maybe here, maybe you never know because he's again, you've got more youth coming in,
Right.
which is I mean a great thing that Eric Ramsey has done is bringing in more youth. It sounds like for the moment, Oluwase is content on staying here. He signed an extension this past winter, but
Yeah.
uh, I big Tiny fan. I hope he does great, and I hope that if we do end up going with a 5-3-2, he pairs well with Yaboa, and
Yeah.
they're gonna just play off each other all the time and be like a Dwight York, Andy Cole
Yeah.
type of pair there.
Man, they're gonna look dangerous. It's gonna be exciting. I've got a lot of hype in Minnesota, but what does hype turn into for you? Where does this team finish in 2025 in the Western Conference?
I was on Battered MLS fans last night, and I picked fourth. Um, when they asked me that question, and I think I'm going to stick with that.
Okay.
I think they come fourth, top four. They get an MLS playoff home game or home series as it is now. I think that the talent we're adding is great, and I think that Eric Ramsey is just going to build off what he's done last year. and I think we're going to be dangerous. I think people are going to take us for granted, and we're going to just sneak up on them.
I'm really hyped about Minnesota's attack, but the rest of it feels kind of meh,
Yeah.
right? Their center backs are a question. We talked about that. Left back is set. We talked about that. Right back, Dotson. Don't know what's happening there. Center mids feel okay, right? Pending Dotson, but even then still feels all right. And the attack is solid, right? So I think in a Western Conference that is going to be really shifted in my prediction for the Western Conference and the East really is that you're going to see a completely different top four from for each side. I think Minnesota are in that conversation that they're fighting for it up until maybe the last 4 weeks of the season, but they just are missing out on the juice to get into that top four. So I think they finish somewhere between 5 and 8. But I don't think it's going to be like they're sneaking into 5 and 8 or 8 and 7. I think they're dropping into 5 and 6.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and it's like I said, I like Eric Ramsey. I think he's got a good focus on what he wants to do. That attack is going to be super super fun to watch. It's just, and I guess it's another question to add to the one question thing is like last year LA had a dangerous attack with a sketchy defense, and everyone's like, but then they controlled the ball for 75% of the game. Ricky Puig had 400 billion touches and nobody touched the ball from him. And it's like, okay, well, we don't
Yeah.
need to worry about who's in the back because nobody can get the ball anyway. So
Right.
is that what Minnesota's going to do? And honestly, I think they have a better chance to do it than some other teams have tried to do. So it'll be interesting to see.
They could, yeah. I mean, like I said, I mentioned Joaquin Pereira before. I think his
Yeah.
playmaking ability is going to be great. Of course, you can't forget Robin Lod up on the right side, a great assister last year. I'm hoping he continues that this year. And then on the left, you either have Joseph Rosales playing up in the wing or in the on the left back, and in the meantime, you could have somebody else fill in like Bang Wane
Mhm.
or Sang Bin Zhang. I think they've been players that have come off the bench and done really well. Uh, yeah, I mean, when you have that kind of system supplying the ball to Kelvin Yeboah and Tani Oluwase, I think that it could end up being that way. But like you said, the defense is a question mark. It
Mhm.
was a question mark last year, and we are adding talent to it, which I am very, very encouraged with because Nico Romero comes from the Argentine Primera Liga in Atletico Tucumán, who are a decent team down there. They're no Boca Juniors, but they're a decent team. I think he's gonna boost the back, and the only question is Michael Boxall's age gonna catch up with him,
Mhm.
and is Jefferson Diaz gonna be able to get his stuff together and play as a unit?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's going to be really fun to watch Minnesota. I think they're going to bring a lot of excitement to this league. That is going to be for sure. But we'll have to wait and see what that means for their finish. Connor, thank you so much for being here, man. Always a great time to chat with you. Always a lot of fun. And I want to give you a little bit of time, tell people who you are, where to find you, and what you do.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's always great being here on the Designated Players podcast. I always love making an appearance here. We are Lunacy Podcast. We cover all things Minnesota United FC and all things Minnesota craft beer. So every show we have a Minnesota craft brewery on, just a little can of beer, and we introduce it right before we get into the soccer stuff. You can find us on the social media we're most active on is Twitter. You can find us at LunacyP. And then you can find our podcast as Lunacy Podcast on Spotify, iHeart, Apple Music, pretty much anywhere you can find a podcast. And yeah, we post a link to the new episode on our X profile every single time we put one out there. So check us out. We'd love to hear from you guys, and we're generally pretty good at monitoring it as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, check us out.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Like if you think Scarf of the Week is cool, I don't know if you have a name for your segment, but I call it Beer of the Week, and I think it is just super super neat, and it's unique, right? It's different. You don't see it a lot, so for that alone, go check them out. But of course, great content, great coverage of Minnesota. We wouldn't bring them on if they didn't, right? And if your first time is here to see us, I say us as if Connor is here. We are the designated players. We are doing 30 team previews with 30 content creators. You are number 29. There's only one more to go after yours. So watch all the other ones beforehand, figure out what's going on in the West, what people think about what's happening in the West, find some players to watch and keep an eye on. But we also do during the season the basically MLS news, player transfers, coach movement, any stupid decision Don Garber makes that we need to react to, just general stuff like that we chat about. And then we also do MLS history. So if you're a newer Minnesota United fan or you joined and followed MLS just when Minnesota joined us, that's totally cool. Welcome to be here. We take fan created lists of historical moments from the league and we cover them and tell their stories. So if you want to know how the league got to be where it is today, come follow us and find out. That's kind of where we're at. I think we started in 96, of course, and we're up to 2010s now, somewhere in that area. So we got a lot of really fun ones coming, stuff that formed me as a fan. So you're going to see a lot of pain in those episodes in the next couple of weeks. So be sure to come on over and check those out. But Connor, thanks again so much for being here. Listeners, thanks for listening to us, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players and MLS Podcast. See ya.